Welcome back to Mindful Aging. Scrolling through our phones or watching the news these days, it feels like every single week there is a brand new thing we are supposed to be terrified of. If you've been browsing the internet lately, you might have stumbled across a pretty alarming, and frankly terrifying, headline. Countless articles and viral videos are suddenly claiming that reheating 5 specific everyday foods can directly cause pancreatic cancer, especially for those of us who have crossed the 50-year mark. It's a scary thought, isn't it? You spend your evening putting some leftover chicken or spinach into a container. You pop it in the microwave the next day for a quick lunch, and suddenly you're told you're putting your pancreas at severe risk. It makes you second-guess every meal you make. But today, we are going to take a deep breath, and we are going to separate the viral fiction from the actual, factual science. I spend a lot of time breaking down complex scientific subjects for students of all ages and backgrounds, and I've found that fear almost always disappears when we actually understand how things work on a molecular level. So, we're going to look closely at the organic chemistry of our food. We are going to explore exactly what happens to the molecular structure of our meals when they are exposed to heat multiple times. We will talk about what the pancreas actually does, why our digestion changes as we age, and which food habits we actually should be mindful of to protect our organs and our overall health. Grab a notebook, maybe a warm cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's dive in. Understanding your pancreas after 50. Before we talk about the food, we need to talk about the star of the show, your pancreas. Most of us don't think about our pancreas until something goes wrong with it. It is a small, somewhat hidden organ, tucked right behind your stomach. But despite its size, it is an absolute powerhouse. Think of it as your body's personal chemical factory. It has 2 main jobs. First, it produces insulin to help regulate your blood sugar. And second, it produces essential digestive enzymes. When you eat a meal, your pancreas pumps out these enzymes into your small intestine to break down the fats, the proteins, and the carbohydrates you just ate. But as we age, starting in our 40s and accelerating into our 50s and 60s, our cellular regeneration slows down. Our pancreas might not produce quite as many enzymes as it used to. Our stomach acid might become a little less potent. Our digestion becomes more sensitive to stress, and more sensitive to heavy, complex, or chemically altered foods. So, the goal isn't to be afraid of leftovers. The goal is simply to make our hardworking pancreas's job as easy as possible. Food number 1. Repeatedly heated cooking oils. With that in mind, let's start with the one food practice that actually does have a strong, scientifically proven link to cellular damage and inflammation. And that is, repeatedly heated cooking oils. When you deep fry something, let the oil cool down, and then heat it back up the next day. A fascinating, and slightly concerning, chemical reaction occurs. If you've ever looked into organic chemistry, you know that heat is just a form of energy. And when you apply too much energy to a molecule, you can completely rearrange its structure. Just like understanding how chemical isomers work, where the exact same atoms rearrange themselves into a completely different shape and behave differently, heat fundamentally rearranges the fat molecules in our cooking oils. When oils are pushed past their smoke point multiple times, they oxidize. The heat breaks the chemical bonds and forms volatile new compounds, specifically things like aldehydes and furan. These compounds are highly reactive, and they cause something called oxidative stress in the body. They act like microscopic wrecking balls, bouncing around and damaging healthy cells. For our pancreas, which is already working overtime to produce the specific lipase enzymes needed to digest fats, oxidized oils add a massive, totally unnecessary workload. Now, I want to be clear. This doesn't mean eating a reheated French fry at a restaurant will instantly give you pancreatic cancer. But, chronic consumption of oxidized, reheated oils slowly increases your overall systemic inflammation. And chronic, long-term inflammation is a known risk factor for many different types of cancers. After 50, our body's natural antioxidant defenses are lower than they were in our 20s. So, we need to be more protective. The best choice? If you're reheating a meal at home, do it gently, and try to avoid reheating greasy, deep-fried foods altogether. Food number 2. Processed meats. Number 2 brings us to processed meats. Things like bacon, sausage, deli meats, and hot dogs. Now, The medical community, including the World Health Organization, has established a very real link between heavily processed meats and gastrointestinal cancers, including pancreatic and colorectal cancer. But what exactly happens when we reheat them? Why does the internet say reheating them is the danger? Processed meats are loaded with preservatives called nitrates and nitrites. Manufacturers use these chemicals to prevent the growth of dangerous bacteria like botulism, and to give the meat that appealing, bright pink color. On their own, in small amounts, they aren't necessarily the enemy. But when they are exposed to very high heat, like frying up leftover bacon in a skillet, or microwaving a hot dog until the skin blisters and pops, a chemical synthesis occurs. The high heat causes the nitrites to combine with the natural amines in the meat, forming entirely new compounds called nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are widely recognized as known carcinogens. When we consume them regularly, they can cause mutations and damage the DNA in our cellular lining. The real risk here isn't the simple act of reheating. It is the high heat applied to the chemical preservatives. If you are going to enjoy these foods, moderation is absolutely key, especially as we age and our digestive tract becomes more vulnerable. And if you do happen to have leftovers, warm them very gently, on a low temperature setting, rather than blasting them with high heat that causes them to crisp, sizzle, or char. Food number 3. Leafy greens and the spinach myth. Let's shift gears and talk about number 3. Leafy greens. Specifically things like spinach, kale, and celery. This is where the viral internet videos really tend to exaggerate and cause unnecessary panic. The dramatic claim is that reheating leftover spinach is highly toxic, and will directly ruin your pancreas. Let's correct that misconception right now, and look at the actual biology. Leafy greens absorb nitrates naturally from the soil as they grow. They need nitrogen to thrive. When you cook a big pot of spinach, and then let it sit out on the stove at room temperature for hours and hours, bacteria from the air begins to multiply. As that bacteria grows, it naturally converts those plant-based nitrates into nitrites. If you then reheat that spinach, you are consuming those newly formed compounds. However, the actual risk of this causing cancer from a single bowl of leftover spinach is incredibly low. The real issue here, the thing that actually affects those of us over 50, is digestive strain and foodborne illness. Reheated greens that haven't been stored properly can cause severe stomach upset, cramping, and bacterial irritation in your gut. Your pancreas and your delicate gut microbiome prefer things to be easy and predictable. They don't want to fight off unwanted bacteria. If you make a big batch of cooked greens for dinner, don't leave them on the stove. Cool them quickly, and put them straight in the fridge. Better yet, skip the reheating entirely. Toss that leftover cooked spinach into a cold salad the next day with some olive oil and lemon juice. It tastes delicious. It preserves all the wonderful vitamins and nutrients, without any of the digestive fuss or bacterial worry. Food number 4. Starchy carbohydrates. For our fourth food, we are looking at leftover starchy carbohydrates, specifically rice and potatoes. There is a very stubborn myth circulating that reheating rice produces cancer-causing chemicals. I am happy to tell you, it doesn't. There is no chemical reaction in rice that turns it into a carcinogen when you warm it up. But there is a very different danger lurking in leftover starches, and it all comes down to microscopic spores. Uncooked rice naturally contains spores of a bacteria called Bacillus cereus. These spores are incredibly tough. They are like tiny, armored shields. When you boil the rice, the heat doesn't always kill the spores. If you then leave that cooked rice sitting out at room temperature, those spores hatch into bacteria, and they begin to multiply rapidly, producing a toxin. If you reheat that rice the next day, the heat might kill the live bacteria, but it does not destroy the toxin they left behind. This can lead to a very sudden, very severe case of food poisoning. As our immune and digestive systems change with age, a severe bout of food poisoning takes a much harder toll on our bodies. It causes massive dehydration, and it forces our pancreas and liver to deal with the resulting digestive chaos and inflammation. To protect your digestion, treat cooked starches with respect. Store your rice or potatoes in the fridge immediately after cooking. And here is a fun, positive science fact for you. When you cool potatoes and rice, their chemical structure changes into something called resistant starch, which actually feeds the good bacteria in your gut and lowers your blood sugar. Food number 5. Charred and denatured proteins. Finally, let's talk about our 5th food. Reheating proteins like chicken, steak, or pork. When it comes to leftover meats, the danger usually lies in the microwave and in the frying pan. Think about what happens when you put a piece of leftover chicken in the microwave for 3 minutes. It comes out tough, dry, and rubbery, right? In chemistry, this is called protein denaturation. The extreme, rapid heat causes the protein structures to bind together incredibly tightly, squeezing out all the moisture. When you swallow that tough, rubbery meat, your stomach acid struggles to break it down. It passes into the small intestine partially undigested, forcing your pancreas to pump out extra protease enzymes to try and finish the job. It is exhausting for your digestive system. Furthermore, if you choose to reheat that meat in a pan until it chars or burns, you create compounds called heterocyclic amines and advanced glycation end products. These compounds, unlike the rubbery chicken, actually are linked to cellular aging, inflammation, and an increased risk of cancer. So, what is the solution? When reheating chicken or steak, slice it up into smaller, manageable pieces. Add a little splash of water or broth to a pan, cover it with a lid, and warm it very gently on a low heat. The steam will keep the protein soft, easily digestible, and completely free of any dangerous char. Your pancreas will thank you for making its job so much easier. So, what is the real takeaway from all of this chemistry and biology? Reheating your food is not a guaranteed ticket to pancreatic cancer. The internet loves a scary headline, because fear gets clicks and views. But the truth is usually found in the quiet chemistry of the food, and the common sense of how we handle it in our kitchens. Our bodies are beautifully designed and incredibly resilient, but as we cross the 50-year mark, we simply want to treat our digestive system, including our hardworking pancreas, with a little more grace and respect. Avoid repeatedly heating your cooking oils. Be cautious and moderate with processed meats. Cool and store your food safely to prevent bacterial growth. And never cook or reheat your leftovers to the point of charring. Healthy aging is not about fear. It is about making mindful, educated, and practical choices, so we can continue to thrive, stay active, and enjoy every single meal we make. If you found this deep dive helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I would absolutely love to hear from you in the comments section below. What is a food or nutrition myth you've heard recently that you would like me to look into and break down for you? Stay mindful, stay healthy, and I will see you in the next video.